Welcome back to New Realities. I'm really excited to continue this series with my good friend Viola Rose. And last time we talked about this whole aspect of what we call the archons are about, and we'll get into that. But today's guest is Isabella Greene, who wrote a fantastic book. Why don't you introduce Isabella, Viola, and give a
Sure,
background?
yeah. So yes, we have been having these conversations about the archonic nature of our reality and exploring this topic, which is the topic of all topics, so important. And my friend and colleague Isabella Greene is so at the forefront of this topic right now because it's just up in the collective. And her book is amazing primer and amazing, just like introduction to this whole topic, but more than an introduction, because her book also gives solutions and tools and techniques that you can use to navigate this subject rather than just land it into your lap and then just be lost. So we are delighted to have Isabella Greene here today to just have a conversation with us. We will want to hear about your body of research from your own experience, which is such a unique vantage point. So welcome, Isabella.
Yes,
Thank you
and
so much, Viola. Thank you.
I just wanted to put up a picture of the book, but I'll get to that later, unless you have a picture have. But yes, no, thank you for that introduction. And her book is called Leaving the Trap, How to Exit the Reincarnation Cycle. And there's so much to unpack there, right there. But
There's a picture of
oh, there's a picture, Leaving the Trap. So leaving the reincarnation trap and how this fits into what the archons are doing. And if you look at the last session we did, that the archons are sucking our energy, our emotional energy. And what I get from what you're saying, the reincarnation keeps us in that emotional cycle. Is that right, Isabella?
reincarnation is just an extension of sustaining. It's a system that sustains the matrix. So the matrix feeds the reincarnation cycle, sends the souls there, and then the reincarnation cycle feeds the matrix because it's all based on like unfulfilled human potential, unfulfilled human desires, and the archons that greet the souls on the way in. They present different tactics. They show how inadequate we were in our life, and then that we need to go back and do better and learn more. And there is a whole lot of different ideas that circulate there, and they also circulate here within the matrix. And so the humanity is kept within this system, and that system is taking care of keeping humanity quite disempowered. The whole system just cuts off the awareness of how truly powerful we are, the infinity of our souls. And so that's the idea.
But one thing I think we have to define, and maybe you can't do that too, Viola, is what is this matrix? What how do you define that? Either one of you.
Go ahead, Viola.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, we're living in some sort of simulation, something. There's something here that is sometimes called a bad copy of a copy, or
Yeah.
some sort of hologram or simulation, to whatever degree that it's real or not. This seems to be some sort of farm, some sort of loosh harvesting station, energy harvesting system. Just like animals on a farm, we are
Yeah.
also animals on a farm, and our life force, our chi, our energy, our emotions seems to be fuel to keep this simulation running.
So you're
And I
saying
can
the
add
yeah, go ahead.
I
Yeah,
can
please.
add to that because I do personal sessions, and because recently my subject has been exiting reincarnations, the clients that are coming in have questions related to that. And so a lot of information, I'm in an altered state, I'm in trance when I do sessions. So I have access to what my logical brain doesn't have access to. And I have been receiving bits of information. And literally this week, I received the information that there were three parts of human history, And the final part, the third tier that we're in, was created, deliberately generated when when Earth reality switched hands, so to speak, and there are different set of handlers. The actual Archonic reality was installed, like when the Archons came to own the Earth plane and the planet and everything that goes here, they installed the system, the matrix, and the reincarnation system, and that expands from our everyday reality, what we are facing and banging against here in this Earth plane, and every one of us on this channel, I'm sure, are fully aware what I'm talking about. The covert governments and all of that, and I don't even have the terminology to explain that because that is not my focus, but it also includes and extends into the astral dimension and the layers or the dimensions of the astral plane, the afterlife, the space where we go during near-death experiences. All of that is a part of the matrix, except it's not non-physical. So it expands into the non-physical as well. And is that a simulation or not? There is a lot of debate going on right there now. But it definitely is in existence. I have observed that through my out-of-body experiences, through my near-death experiences, and I have seen it firsthand. So this is what's going on as far as what the matrix is. The matrix is a system of control for the purpose of collecting, farming collecting the energy and farming the human race and utilizing the human race for the benefit of a different species.
Right. No, that's my feeling. I'd love to hear what those other two layers were before this third layer. But can you just explain what those layers were and before you discovered this last third layer?
Before the third, it's these are the times in history. As far as I literally just received that this week, so I don't have all that much information, but I know that at the beginning there were different owners or different project managers, Project Earth, right? So Earth had a different project management system that was more benevolent. And so we are probably talking Atlantis, we're probably talking Lemuria, when civilizations and the human body vehicle and the human consciousness was more connected and a truly the whole package, or at least like the much bigger package than what happened after the third group of owners came to own the Earth reality. And at that point, my understanding is that point started somewhere around the like that's what the Sumerians talk about, the Sumerian tablets talk about, that this is when the human DNA was played with to lessen the humans. And if you listen to the brilliant work of Paul Wallace, or read his books, he says that it's in the Bible, it's in the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, it says that humans became too much like us, and we want to, and too, too strong, and we need to lessen their abilities and who they are so that we could utilize them better. And I'm definitely, it's not written in this text,
No.
but this is what my understanding is, that the third reality on Earth, the third level, and that's when the Archons came in, that's when the whole entrapment system was installed. I also know this because in a few personal sessions, when people were asking, why would I go to Earth when I knew I was going to be trapped? The answer that I got was you came in before the system was installed, and it was installed while you were in physicality, so you did not have access to the bigger picture. And when you got the access to the bigger picture, meaning your physical body passed on, you found out that there was a ceiling there and you couldn't get out. So that.
Well, no, that explains some of that. But I want to go back to the term that you brought up, Viola, the louche farm. Now, from what I understand, and give people a context, that these archonic energies live off of our emotions, our intense emotions, our jealousy, our hate, or even our love, even but the intensity of it, and addictions and wars. I mean, they love wars. I mean, I'm sure they even create the wars because and so every human being, someone cuts you off in traffic, you react. That's some louche energy for these archons. So everything feeds the archonic matrix. Not everything. When we come from a place of, I think, centeredness and deep love, I think we break free. Would you agree with that? How do we break free, Viola, in your terms of that?
Isabella just said something about a ceiling, and I just thought that we could be called ceiling busters as a nickname. We're, busting through that ceiling. I think when you get into the sacred space of your heart, the unified field within, and you go directly into the infinite field within that, and you are in that neutral space that is loving, that you're not food in that point. If you start directing that love in personal ways or in worship ways, it becomes food and fuel again. But there is a sacred neutrality where you're plugged into the source of all that is truly holy, and you're in your center. And in that state, I think that there's a neutrality where you're not giving your life force energy.
Wow.
Yes. And I would add to that the practices that I personally, I intimately know, and I've been doing for 10 years now. Every night I get up around 3 a.m. and I do these advanced yogic techniques of breath work and meditation, and I go into what's called the state of samadhi. And when you come back, it's not that you come back, you become it. And so you're no longer triggered by traffic or little things. I mean, things that are unhealed and unprocessed within you, there's still a match to triggers. And so doing the inner healing work also helps. But when you are doing your inner healing work, you're moving forward towards that divine neutrality that Viola just mentioned. And then it becomes the reality that you experience on Earth is what is now called 5D kind of thing, right? But you do fluctuate back in and out of it, but predominantly you do experience the sense of relative calmness. So you're not you don't constantly have your arm out for the losers, to feed off of you. You might produce some here and there, but for the majority of the population, it's constant, because it's a constant bombardment from all directions, from the media, from TV, from the news, from the world events. All of that is to keep humanity in constant state of massive louche production.
Right.
All fear-based.
Absolutely. It's totally constant. Most people think that's who they are. They're their emotional body. They're their passions. They're their intensity. And that's their identification. There's no way, in a sense, to say, you're feeding the matrix, you're feeding the farm. And so the idea of reincarnation, I think, is what you're saying, is that we go to the other side and we still have that intense emotionality, and we're coming back to re-engage that, because that's what the archons want, because that's food. When we stop doing that, when we come to that center of the heart and we are at peace, there's no longer food. So the reincarnation trap, I think this is what you're saying, is having us come back and keep generating the emotionality, because it must be a huge population of archons out there, because they're each every person has sort of their own archonic specialist. I just talked to my mother. There must be 100 feeding off of her, but I mean, I don't know, but it's so strange. Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely true. Yeah, yes, Isabel.
Either that or it is a simulation. And if it is a simulation, and it is the very advanced AI system that feeds off of consciousness of each individual human being, because we're not really evolving the souls here. We're just running the cycles of consciousness, or unconsciousness rather, right? So if it is an ancient technology that is similar to how we know, like the Greys, right? The Greys, they populate, or some other species, they populate the biological body vehicles with the consciousness that is exported into that. And now humanity is starting to catch up on that technology too, right? But if it is that, then it's just the movie The Matrix. There's this machine there, right? And it greets everyone, and it produces exactly the picture of what you did on Earth. That's your life review, and all the weak spots, and it reads your consciousness, and it generates the visuals of the archons, or the beings that well, we're not seeing the archons, we're seeing Jesus, so we're seeing angelic beings, right? So it generates it reads, it scans your consciousness, and it generates what you're going to believe in, and then it gives you the script, like, hey, you did this and that wrong, go back, you now need to pay off your karma, meaning go back and continue suffering on Earth. So if it is a simulation, then we don't have thousands of, hundreds of, or millions of archonic beings, actually. But it's a system that collects the energy, produces the simulation, and feeds it into some other reality where the archons are.
But I don't understand the idea of simulation. Explain what that means. I mean, we're in a game of that sort of thing. I mean, what does that mean?
I only have an idea of how that works in the outside of the Earth plane, and I would, if Viola wants to take over here of about this plane, I would be more than happy, because and David Icke talks about that too, as far as I know. But I can see very clearly how it could be a simulation in the astral dimension, because we're in the non-physical space. And it is a well-known fact that when you astral project, you can actually influence the circumstances and the visuals that you experience when you astral project. You can influence that by your state of being, by the resonance. And so how does that work, right? It could be that that's the specificity of that dimension, or it could be that that's an AI. Like now we have these new gadgets where you just say 2 words to it and it produces the whole film for you, right? Based on the whole video. So there is that. But that's how I see it. It might be in the afterlife dimension. I do not really quite have the understanding of how it works in this reality. Viola, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, I'll chime in. I think one thing is how the laws of nature are not defined here. They're almost like suggestions, and they all can be broken, and they all do get broken, right? There are people who levitate, there are breatharians, there are people who are defying the laws of what is natural here. That points to the fact that this is not as solid as we think it is, that it's a program, and the program can be influenced. And if this is a program, just like we have in computers, it's easy, I think a lot easier for us in modern times now to understand the simulation theory, because we do have computers and simulated realities within that to have a connection to. Back in the ancient texts, describing that had to be a little bit more creative. And you can read some of the ancient texts, and when they're talking about samsara and Maya and it being illusion, it makes sense now. And so if this is a computer program like the holodeck on Star Trek, for example, where none of this is actually really real, then that kind of you start to play around with that, walk around in my life, and I'm looking, there's an actor, there's an actor, there's an actor, this is simulation. None of this is real. And I'm starting to like play around with that in my everyday to try that on to see what that feels like. And it feels really possible that this is, if we could just crack the codes, or at least one code here in the simulation, then maybe they all start to crumble, dismantling our reality of everything that we've been
Well,
given in the programming, even in our
well,
DNA.
it's like saying, okay, I'm seeing you guys on the screen here. That's a simulation. What I'm seeing on my computer screen is a simulation of the reality. But if I thought that's all that existed, that you were those people on that flat screen, and that's where you lived, or that's where we all lived on these screens, and there was no essence behind these images, that's a sort of simulation and we'd be trapped because I have to get back to my computer screen or else I don't exist, right? Because that's the world of my simulation, the world of my projected sense of self. And I guess something like that, right?
It's convoluted when it's simulation within simulation within simulation. So what if this is a simulation, but now I'm within a simulation on a computer screen, talking to you, and like there's layers of it which make it like a crazy maze to try to get out of.
But breaking the cycle. Okay, so let's get back to that. So when you escape this reincarnation cycle, which you're calling the trap, there must, even getting out of the matrix or the simulation. Well, what is there then? Where are we? I mean, there's always
That's a
something.
great question.
Well, that's the big question, Isabella. When you escape the trap, where do you go and where are you and who are you?
All right. So far, I have suggested a few options, but the most ultimate alternative is returning into the innate state of being. And you can practice that right here in this reality by doing these yogic practices and the breath work that shuts down the left brain, the talking brain that is a servant of the matrix, the brain that constantly produces thoughts and that plugs you into the matrix, and it also filters out everything that isn't relevant to your immediate survival, your physical survival. So your brain is not your friend. Let's just say the brain is the friend of the matrix, and so doing the practices to shut that down and then bring yourself, your life force, the life force that lives in this physical biological computer, which is our body. That's all it is. Bring that life force out by choice, by will, and take it past the astral plane, past the simulation, past the whole system. You become invincible. You go straight into the field of the absolute, and you can train yourself to do that. And so then in that case, you have escaped every possible simulation, structure, restraint, system, and even any sort of representation, a personification of yourself. You're back to the original essence of everything. And from there, well, you can either just bask in that incredible state of being, or you could direct yourself elsewhere. And there are also higher realms that are outside of the matrix system. And so when you learn how to control your non-physical form and direct it where you prefer to direct it, you can actually learn to do that throughout while you're still alive and direct it into the higher realms outside of the dimensions of the matrix, and then can do the same exact thing at the moment of your passing, except you do not need any techniques to do that at the moment of passing. You just quite literally will repeat what you've trained yourself to do while you're still alive.
So you're saying instead of go ahead. I was just going to say instead of going to the light, go ahead. What were you going to say, Viola?
Oh, I was going to ask that you're saying that, there's the matrix, there's all the layers of the astral, all of these things, but then there's also source on the other side of that that you can connect directly to. But you're saying as well that there are actually created energetic realms of some sort outside of the matrix that you've explored.
Yeah. I would say that that is definitely true because there are realities that are not a part of the matrix, realities of complete freedom, complete, that pure creative state, the pure creative force, where things are in light form and in energy form. And you are that consciousness that is able to do anything just for exploration of itself. That idea is something that we hear here in the New Age communities when they say, oh, we're source exploring ourselves within this earth dimension. Well, if there are there are different layers of that. And so when you get meow, when you get those cat, when you get to the level where you are outside of the limitations of this, these are the higher realms, and they could be explored, and everything is present within the field of source. Everything is present. And so that is up to you there as consciousness, but you're not going to be Viola or Isabella or Alan in that. You're going to be that pure consciousness of source, which is the system or the state of being that allows you to create anything you yourself want to experience. So there it's a complex structure, and even structure is not the right word. It's the complex field. So the quantum field of everything, let's just say.
Let's talk a little bit about how you have access to these realms. Now, you said you're alluding to a breath work practice that you do that kind of just has you bypass the astral completely and get right beyond it in order to explore these places. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, and the foundation of that breath work is in the ancient teachings and in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and in that's a little book that really quite literally describes the process of getting out of the whole matrix system, and it's only 10 pages long. And so there's concept that it's true that the truth is very simple. We don't need to spend hours in discussion of anything. Just do your practices and you'll know for yourself. And so the breath work is called Tantra Kriya Kundalini Pranayam, that wakes up your Kundalini energy. It also moves, allows you to utilize your life force as that rocket fuel that sends you out of body. It's very different than going out of body with your astral projection. It's very intense at the beginning, but then once you've paved that way and you manage to handle your body, because the body will resist and oppose you in every possible way, but once you have trained your body to do that and to know that you're coming back, don't worry about it, right? So the body will stop kicking and screaming, and you have learned how to do that, and it takes perseverance. It takes in discipline and intent. And now I have a lot of followers, and they tell me, oh, I did it for a month and nothing happened. Well, I'm sorry, for a month. I did it for 10 years, and this year I found myself in the higher octaves of samadhi, because there are different levels of access where you have brain activity, and then when you get to the point where you don't anymore, you have completely departed. But shooting out of the top of the head like a rocket and going, it gets you right past. You don't need to use any ideas, any techniques, anything. The energy is so strong that is within you, that it sends you right past the astral plane. You don't even get trapped in there. And if you do, that means that you did not utilize all of your life force to
What was
go.
the name of the book? What was the name of that? Where you can taste
Practice.
template.
The
Template.
practice,
Yeah.
Tantric Kriya Kundalini Pranayama. It's also called the Cosmic Cobra Breath.
I
The
think he was asking
Cosmic
about the
Cobra
10-page
Breath.
book from Patanjali.
Patanjali, yeah, that's the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And in very simple words, in just 10 pages, it explains the state, the normal human state, and then the superhuman state, and everything in between. And it talks about the breath work, and how it shuts down the mind and the levels of samadhi, and how you go from the basic state of suffering into the enlightened state. 10 pages of short little verses, and it's all in there. So
Yeah, I think it was an Egyptian practice too, because when I read a biography of Om Seti, Search of Om Seti, she talked about Seti, the pharaoh who had that practice, who was able to visit her on those other levels. And so,
absolutely, because the cosmic cobra breath exists. Apparently, it exists in every mystical tradition, and it used to be a hidden practice, something that was not shared with the commoner, only for the priests and all that, because that's how the system was before. Right now, we have everything available at our fingertips, and so Egyptians have the cosmic cobra breath. Yogic traditions have the cosmic cobra breath. My understanding is that even the Christian traditions have a variation of that breath work. So humanity knew it from the beginning of time, but it was such a taboo, right? It was such a oh, you're doing the work of the devil if you get involved in any of these practices. So it's been pushed out of our awareness.
well, it's been pushed out by the archons themselves. They don't want people to eat of the tree of knowledge like it says in the Bible. So
Exactly.
when you do that, the apple, the fruit, is the activation of the pineal pituitary system, which is
There.
the fruit of consciousness. And when you access that, you ingest that and you expand. So we've been kept, dumbed down and
Yeah.
ignorant to be the Loosh Farm specimens that they think we're here for. But the other thing you mentioned, Viola, is those other realms of reality beyond the matrix may be the ones you originally saw, Isabella, that existed before the archons had put their control over us. So they still exist, but we have to kind of break through that webbing or that field to get there through these practices.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for saying that, because it is exactly the point that other higher realities, higher levels of consciousness, all of that existed. And first two layers of history on Earth were connected to that. And then the lower dimensional consciousness came in, took over. We hear about that from Bringers of the Dawn, that book where she says there were wars fought in space for ownership of Earth. And so that technically probably started around that, what the book of Genesis talks about that. But you're absolutely right about that. Thank you for helping me to put the, the dot things together here in my mind, because they absolutely existed and still exist and will continue to exist outside of this local system that is the matrix system.
But maybe that's our destiny. We're here to build soul essence by moving through that matrix, or like Jesus sitting in the desert for 40 days being tempted. That was all that arcana, that's how I interpret all that archonic influence. No, I'm not going, I'm just going to stay centered and activating the divine frequency. So maybe if we could just convince that's what you're here to do, folks, is to not be tempted by the matrix. And of course, people are too busy and too obsessed and too fearful to even pay attention to that kind of conversation, right?
Well, you talk that feeds the cycles of samsara, because people fixated here. We're trained from day one to be fixated on desires, right? The body comes with a set of desires. We come with a set of needs, and it's all pretty much for the body, for the physical survival, for the comfort. And so all of that feeds the matrix, and that's why we're cut off from the knowledge of the higher essence of ourselves. I do not subscribe to the idea that we are on Earth doing any good for the evolution of the soul, because if you have experienced the state of super consciousness even once, you would know that the soul is perfection itself. It is already the substance or the energy, the state of being that contains everything. What we are dealing with on Earth, from my perspective, is being yeah, we are maybe growing and expanding the levels of consciousness, which is not the same as the soul, which is not the same as the fabric of the soul. But within the New Age community, we are taught that, well, we're on Earth to evolve the soul, right? And I think there's a confusion between the idea of what the soul really is and what soul requires or does not require, and the progress of evolution of consciousness. Yeah, we're doing that here on Earth, I would agree.
Maybe. So
it seems, by design, by absolute design, do they keep us so distracted, so that way we cannot, like if this is a breeder program, the whole objective of everything here is so that the beings will continue to procreate and continue to create more beings for the farm. And so we are programmed in our code, in the computer code, in our DNA, to be obsessed with food and sex and everything that will just keep the species going, and not focusing on the higher centers. It's like, when you look at it from that way, it seems pretty clear that this is a farm, and it's really takes somebody being willing to dismantle their reality and even step outside of it to even look at the system and go, oh wait, I'm just running a program, right? I'm just running the story that they've given to me for my life. And it's amazing to see how much this is up in the collective now. Isabella wrote her book, and David Icke wrote a book, and Howdy Mikowski wrote a book, and like there's conversations around this now, right? Even the series on Iconic. And Alan, this has been burning in you for a while now, and you've wanted to do a series on this, and you just want to talk about this too. Like, it's amazing that so many of us are getting this pulse that is anti the system, and maybe we are here as systems busters to bucket, because it can help the collective. But I would agree with Isabella that I don't know that we're here to grow and learn. I think that's probably part of the New Age psyop, to keep us believing in our struggle as that it has value.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I
a good
agree.
point. That's a good point. But it's not just food and sex, it's money, survival, fear. You got to make money. You got to do this. You have to, pay your taxes, do all those things, or else the fear of, not having enough. That's a huge louche dessert for those beings, like that.
For sure.
I mean, all of it, the whole way the system is set up, you're right, Viola. It's just to feed the fears, the desires, the obsessions, the addictions, but the people think there is nothing else. That's the situation we're facing, except for the people now that you're saying are awakening to say, well, maybe there is something more, this place of oneness. And the other thing that was interesting, because people think, oh, you pass over the other side, you're in touch with your soul, but you're saying, Isabella, and maybe Viola, that you're not really in touch with your soul. You're in touch with the neurosis of the personality that wants you to come back and do it better. Is it True.
I love the word in here. You're in touch with neurosis of the personality. I'm putting this into my next book, Alan, for
Okay.
sure. This is so funny, but it is true. But it's not really you. You are guilted into it. That's either the simulated beings or the shape-shifting archonic beings. They greet you. And they can present themselves as the ones that you believe in, are angelics or Jesus or Krishna or your loved ones, and they tell you, whoa, you know, you hurt all these people, and you get to re-experience all that, and you feel so guilty that they tell you, you know what, that wasn't cool, go back and do better next time. And so that's when you say, yes, yes, I'm going back. And so you get to rest a little bit in the afterlife, in that dimension, which does feel significantly better than this reality. And any near-death experience, I will tell you that outside of myself. So you do rest a little bit in this beautiful place that feels so amazing, and then you're back in the body, and you don't remember anything that happened. You don't remember that you agreed to continue, or, oh, this person that you hurt is now going to be hurting you in this lifetime. And that is all, that whole structure is just to continue the human beings within the cycles of suffering. I say that the longer you are on earth, the more karma you have, because the more you do, and the more you do, the more you produce the reasons to be considered not good enough or guilty or hurting someone else. And so there's no such thing as pain of karma, but we're presented with that idea throughout scriptures and at the moment of death as well, during the life review.
Well, the longer you're on Earth, though, gives you more time to practice those other skills, though, to free yourself from it as well, right?
If you are in that mind frame. I know, I've been on Earth. I remembered, and it's in my book, I remembered first coming on Earth. And that was before the dinosaurs. So that was over 70 billion years ago. All right. We didn't even, there wasn't even the human body vehicle back then to populate. All right. So I've been on Earth since that time, and only in this lifetime, I am finally remembering that, whoa, you know what? That's how I came in. And finally, I get to get out, because I'm figuring out how to get out. But in between that, there was everything else. There was medieval wars. There were all kinds of atrocities, being burnt at the stake, and this and that. And over, you find yourself in another scenario with the same set of characters that keeps growing, by the way, as your soul group. And you just keep finding yourself in a different variation of a scenario where something terrible happens to you.
So, but
So it takes,
you have to do the practice. You said that's the way out, and
if
that's
you do the practice, you expedite this process that I just described. Because it even says in Yogananda's book, the autobiography of a yogi, although that book is hit or miss. There are some really incredible guidance there, and there's also some misleading guidance there as well. But as to understanding of the astral plane, and that's what I'm saying. But I have a high respect for Yogananda as a teacher. And so he says in that book that if we go through this process that I just mentioned, came in billions of years ago, and then one cycle after the next, it does take millions of years to move even an inch in your consciousness evolution. All right. And this is why we are where we are at. Let's take the book of Genesis. How long ago was that? All these stories in there. And now, only now, in 2023, 2024, we're starting to talk about, hey, you know, something is not right here. But if you do the practices, you expedite this process. It literally, I don't know, for like 1 year becomes 100 years forward movement. And so then you don't have to go through this to even catch your consciousness up through millions and millions of, or thousands of incarnations, if you do your practices. You're right. Thank you, Alan.
Oh, you're
Viola?
muted, Al.
Okay, Viola, what were you thinking about?
I'm thinking how interesting that is, that Isabella, you just talk about how Yogananda said, like, you could just move an inch over lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And that just is worth mentioning in this conversation about the idea how people think that reincarnation is for the purpose of growth. And yet that makes no sense when you look at it through the vantage point of the fact that we don't get to remember. How can you actually truly grow? If it's a school and we're growing, then we would be able to retain our memories after that life and then the next life start and build on that. And because
Yeah.
we get completely mind wiped and start over, that's why maybe it can take, a gazillion lifetimes to move an inch, because it's not designed to set us free. And so
Exactly.
the longer we can live on this planet, the more work we can do to map this out. And supposedly it's not that easy to do it in one lifetime, but if you've got tips and tricks and you're absolutely devoted to breaking free, and there's many different ways to look at that, whether it's enlightenment or breaking free of the matrix or whatever it is, just getting free of it. And if that is your main goal in this life, you can get there. Isabella has carved out a way, and other masters have carved out ways and have come here to map out ways as well.
Well, this
So
was the mystery schools, I think, of the past. Of course, they were kind of had to go underground because they were hunted down and, banished and made illegal and all that. But, the interesting thing you told me, Viola, about Isabella, is that you discovered this on your own. Do you want to talk about, this was a revelation. How did you come into this whole field? Because I think that's very interesting. And I don't know the whole story. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It was a total discovery. I'll be honest with you. I had no idea that other people wrote about this or spoke about it. When I published my book with like trembling hand, like, oh my God, I just gonna put that out because this is what I now know, what came together through all of my experiences. And then people started telling me, oh, did you know David Icke wrote The Trap and the Dream? And that feeds right into your theme. I was like, whoa, I had no idea. Did you know Viola told me about Howdy Makowski? I was like, what? So it
But how did it all come to you to begin with? Kind of just a normal, maybe or not person. Then what happened?
No, it's been a gradual process. I started astral projecting when I was a teenager. And astral dimension is where we have the afterlife and where we have the spirit life invisible to us. And that's where we have the archons operating and running the reincarnation cycle too. The upper astral is heaven, the lower astral is hell. And I was astral projecting into the lower astral. And by the way, in the documentary, The Great Unknown, there is another person who says exactly the same thing. He said, I was astral projecting into low astral, and he gives the whole same story that I lived through. So I was very excited about that. And I learned about the astral dimension and how to go out of body. And I was doing that between 17 and 21 to 24, somewhere there. And then I went into a coma, an American dream, meaning I started, the Matrix got me, let's just say, right? And then I started doing, in 2010, before the practices that came in 2010, that I talk about now, that gave me access to the void, the space of omnipresence. I actually had 2 near-death experiences. One of these near-death experiences was something I did not at all appreciate, and this is how I'm different from other near-death experiencers who get so impressed, but because by that time I was already projecting into the astral dimension. I've already seen all kinds of like how it is and what kind of life is there and what's possible, what's not possible within there. When I had a near-death experience, I was greeted by the figure that looked like Jesus, because at that point I believed in Jesus. And I was begging him. I was exhausted. I was living a really hard life in New York City, hardcore on drugs and rock and roll, and working in the financial services industry during the day. And it was just such a god-awful matrix experience for me, heavy stuff, and I wanted out. And I had an overdose, and I was asking for him. I was begging him for him to keep me there. And with all this love and all this kindness that my heart just flew open, he sent me back. He said, no, it's not your time yet, the standard thing. And I came back and I was really annoyed. I was like, you know what, this is not kindness. I was really upset that he sent me back. So I was like, there's something wrong. Something is wrong with this picture. And then I decided that I want to have a near-death experience again. And I started seeking that out. I wanted to have a simulated near-death experience, because when I talked to people about near-death experiences, they were telling me that there were practices, shamanic practices and ancient practices in Africa and in Egypt as well, where people were put in the state that simulated the near-death experience, and they got to take a look at what's going on there. So I did find a way to have that done. And I had another near-death experience that was induced. And I literally went straight into that astral plane. And by that time, by the way, I could not astral project anymore because of how dense I was at that point. So I could not do that on my own, but I had that induced experience. And I observed the station. I observed like kind of groups of beings shepherding the souls around. And that when I came back, I was very curious at that point. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So what was it that I was looking at? This is just that like added additional information to my own near-death experience, curiosity. And then after that, for another 10 years or so, I was completely dead asleep again. And then I started waking up and I started doing the yogic practices in 2010. And then when I went into the state of source for the first time, I was like, whoa, interesting. There's nothing here. It's not that astral dimension reality that I was experiencing. There are no beings. No one's telling you that you are not good enough or go back or whatever. You're just out and then you're back into the body. And I had a quantum healing hypnosis session with someone trained by Dolores Cannon, because I wanted to ask this question. I was like, what's up with the whole reincarnation cycle, and can I get out? And I got the answers, and all of this is in my book. And then I started talking to other people who were not exactly buying into this whole, oh my God, near-death experience is like going to heaven, the best thing ever. Those who tried to get out, those who begged to get out, those who were duped to come back in, those who were running circles over and over with different sets of beings telling them that you have to go back. And then when they refused, they were still sent back through trickery. And so all of that is in my book. And so this is how I just went ahead and put all these short experiences in my book. My book is pretty short. And so this is how I know. And my attention has been on this question ever since. And I'm getting more and more information through conversations with people, and also through going into the field and picking up more information, because this is where my focus is. It has been since 2023. Yeah, thank you very much, Alan. Yeah, that's on Amazon. And I also have it in audio format, so you can listen to it now as well on Audacity. And yeah.
But you keep getting more information. Are you writing about it even more?
I'm writing the second book. Yeah, I should have that out within the next few months. Almost halfway through already. So yeah, that's coming.
And what's that about? Is that a continuation of your
Yeah.
investigation?
Yeah, it's an expansion, and there'll be more experiences there and more recommendations. And I'm also teaching. We just did a workshop together with Viola, and it's going to be available for purchase pretty soon. I'm setting up a platform where people can stream it outside of YouTube and all that. And then also the other two workshops that I taught early in the year will be a part of that. We have another workshop coming in January where we will be all together in the room. People will have an experiences right in that room when we were in the group, and people were saying how important it is to be in the group of like-minded people that all are thinking in the same way. And so we are hosting another live event with Viola in January 25th. That's coming up pretty soon.
In
And
Sedona.
I'm speaking at Sedona Cosmic Awakening. I'll be on big stage there, Alan, where we saw each other at the Ascension Retreat. So the same stage, I'll be on that stage October 11th through 13th at Sedona Cosmic Awakening, talking about this subject. And there'll be some online classes that I'll be offering as well. So a lot is in the works right now, in the progress. And if anyone wants to follow and check when these things are all finally put together, they can check my website, isabellagreene.com.
And there's
Right.
also a Facebook group that
Yeah.
Isabella started that I help her with, and it's called Leaving Reincarnation. And that's
No, it's
where
exiting
exiting
reincarnation.
reincarnation. And there's a lot of conversation going on there, and a lot of
Mhm.
research, and people asking questions, and both of us chime in here and there, and other people will chime in. And so it's great to have a forum to talk about these things and to bounce ideas off of each other. And it's such a vast topic of topics.
Yeah.
But can't the earth be a really amazing place where you can just feel joy and love, adventure, beauty? I mean, there's some nice things about embodiment.
Yeah.
I mean, or is that a trap? But did I just get sucked into the trap?
It's called the fifth dimension,
All
which
right.
is the higher tier of the matrix still, because it is still all a part of desires. It's based on wanting to have all of your desires fulfilled, wanting to be in a good place. But I think that we are slowly carving our way into dismantling of the whole system, and Earth possibly joining the higher realms eventually. I don't think that's going to happen within our lifetimes, but yeah, Alan, that's coming. Just we might just have to look at it from elsewhere and say, hey, remember this place we were at? Look how it evolved.
Well, maybe one of our lifetimes it could happen if people do remember sometime. Like I do remember my last incarnation, and I do remember, we can come back in with more awareness.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think, Viola? Where should we go? What's happening? What's the next step for people to do watching this?
I think that, if this is a brand new topic, it's great to start asking questions and just
Yeah.
looking at the reality around you and go, why do I believe that? Why do I believe that? Why do I do that way, that way? Why do I celebrate this holiday? Everything. Just start to question everything
Yeah.
and start to lose the stronghold that it has on us, so that we can be free to start navigating in other ways, going into the heart, exploring past the astral, and start to just map out ways so that we can start to be unbound here. And it's a playground. It can be a playground, but that can also be a distraction, right? It's like it can be wonderful. It is as we make it if it's a simulation, but like let's
Yeah.
not get too caught up in creating a beautiful life for ourselves within the simulation that then lessens our desire to actually truly want to be free. So walking lightly, like detached joy, because we want to be in joy anyway, because we don't want to feed the matrix with our suffering, realizing that this place is a farm. But there's that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% because we can while we're here, make the best of it. And we can make the best of it through raising our frequency and doing the practices that show us what's going on. And when you're fully, that's being awake, you're fully awake, you see what's going on, you see what's going on around you and the system, and how you can disengage or engage in a different way, and how you can energetically disengage, and how you can also assist your internal state of being to be matched to a whole different experience. And that's what, when people talk about going into 5D state, that's that. 5D is basically vibrating on the level where you are a match to higher octave of earth plane, the earth reality. And it is a much easier, it's a much easier experience. So
But
it
I
is
think
available. Yeah.
yeah, no, oh, no, sorry. You finished? I mean,
Yeah,
was
it
that?
is available right here within this reality. We're already here. A lot of people start pulling hair and going, "Oh my God, this is so terrible," and "Oh, I'm gonna shoot myself." Look, we're already here. We're already here. Do the best you can with it, and make the rest of your life the best you could give yourself. And it's not brain surgery, it's not that complicated. Do the inner healing work and do the practices that expand your consciousness and connect you to that energy of source. That's it
Yeah,
right
and
there.
also just simply watch your emotionality. Watch where you're triggered and don't feed the trigger. Someone cuts you off in traffic, maybe they had to get some. I mean, I think if we can step back and control the intensity of these reactive emotional human states. I mean, look at the wars. That's all like louche farming deluxe there, start a war, get people to hate each other. They don't care, the archons, that is happening and destroying humans, because they're going to get them on the other side and have them come back and destroy that. And the karmic wheel just keeps going. But if we could step back outside the reactive emotional states and drop into that place you were talking about, Viola, the center, then we become the observer of the reality, and it just all kind of passes in front of us as we watch the human dramas without engaging the dramas. And I
Yeah.
think that's freedom, I think, in a way, don't you think?
I agree, but there are different ways of looking at this. And I do spiritual healing work, and I work with people, who just kind of try to suppress that, right? Oh, I'm not supposed to be that way. So you repress in it. It's gonna blow up in your face when you least expect it. So just suppressing is not the way to go, but when you're triggered by something, usually it's linked to unworthiness. That's the human condition 101 right there, right? And so, as an example, working on that within yourself, right? The not good enough conditioning, working on that, doing the inner healing work will make you naturally stop being triggered. Okay, so it's not that you repress it or you go into spiritual bypassing and you hide behind the beautiful concepts, love and light, and I'm not supposed to act that way. No, you actually do the inner work, and you are going to become that without repressing things. So exactly what you said, but suppressing and spiritual bypassing does not work.
No, I didn't mean suppressing. I mean feeling it without reacting to it, so you're not feeding it. You feel the anger, you feel the sadness, you allow the feelings, but you don't indulge the feelings, is what I meant. Because
And the feelings are inviting you. These feelings are an invitation that show you your traumas. All right. So looking at that why am I triggered? Why does this happen over and over? Why am I triggered, and why do I feel this emotion? If you sit with it and you do the process that by the way, I teach that process in the workshop that will be available pretty soon online for purchase. So I teach this process of doing the inner work, utilizing the breath work. But at first you sit and you observe and you analyze why it is that you are being triggered, because anything that you're triggered about, it's linked to some sort of condition and some sort of trauma of the past. And once you have processed that, that's it. You will never again be triggered about the same thing. So it's very liberating. People don't like to do the inner work because people don't like to feel the discomfort. But then you have a choice of feeling the discomfort for the time you're doing the processing or your entire lifetime. So there's like, I think it's worth investing your attention into doing the inner healing work and then liberating yourself from that trigger. And then you notice the next trigger and the next trigger in the same way.
Yeah. We could wrap up soon, but what do you think of different ET races? Are some here to help, but do you think someone like Bashar, who has a lot of the higher ideals, is that like a helping? I mean, I'm not saying we should listen to all these voices, but because listening to yourself, but there does seem to be help. And then there's the other side that seems to keep us stuck. So I guess it's as above, so below, sort of like that. What do you think, Viola?
Well, I'm interested to hear Isabella's response. I'm
Oh, yeah.
personally, I think that, yeah, personally, I think there's a lot of us here who are maybe trying to help the situation, and I don't trust hardly any of it because it's smoke and mirrors, and there's a lot of deception. Even look at it at moment of death when these beings come to you as your loved ones or as Jesus. Like I go into my heart, I connect to my higher self and directly to source. That's it, straight line. I don't even go sideways into any other channelings or other things. I don't need anything outside of myself. The answers are within. So that's where I lean. But I'm curious about your question to Isabella about other races, and have you encountered them on your journeys and travels?
Good point there. The good point, Viola. I do the same thing. Like and then I say, yeah, they trust the direct guidance of your soul that is plugged into the higher awareness, and that's it. We have presences here that act like they have humanity's best interest in mind, but they don't, and you never know. You will never know that because they know how to present themselves in a way that you will trust them. And we have the ones that from the higher dimensions that do actually want to assist humanity in moving to the next level of consciousness and moving out of this whole system. And I'm not going to comment on Bashar because I just generally don't comment on someone else's work in any way. But Linda Muttenhauer, who you had on your show, Alan, there, she said in one of her interviews, she said that even the US government is aware that there are 3 factions of ETs that have been running, utilizing, running the system on Earth, that have vested interest in the system on Earth, and they have been utilizing humanity for their own purposes. So what do you think about ETs? It's a wide spectrum question, and it depends on what ETs and what exact races was she talking about, and what kind of relationship do they have with Earth plane or humanity, and do they have a vested interest in humanity or not? So that's a vast, vast question, and I don't have the whole spectrum of it. We don't have time right now to analyze.
Linda talks about the reptilians, the tall white Nordics, and the Greys, and they're all competing for control of this planet, and we're just like pawns, like being manipulated by these other forces. But I think what we're talking about here is gaining back control over our soul, really, not just our life, but our soul, to know that what our true essence is transcendent. It's not
Yeah.
actually dependent upon this plane or that dimension. It's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you very much, Alan. Yeah.
I think that it's layers of distraction too. Like whatever's going on this planet with politics, whether it's exopolitics or whether it's what's stuff here, it's still layers of distraction to keep you focused on the matrix. And so taking the much broader vantage point will serve us if we really want to break free of it. But if we're getting caught up too much, even in the aliens and that, like
right.
that still takes our attention and takes our
Yeah.
focus off of doing the real work of going within and getting free.
And
Now-
that brings me to exactly right back to that point that the truth is simple. It does not need us overcomplicating our minds and trying to figure out every little detail. If we do, that just feeds the brain computer in there with more information and more reasons to keep spinning about it. But the truth is simple. And once you have tapped into that true infinity of the soul, you know it, and that's it. And conversations are not even required anymore. But we like our conversations. So thank you very much, Alan. It's wonderful to be here.
This is a great
Thank you.
place to close too. That was a perfect closer.
Yeah. No, thank you, Isabella, for, it's hard work doing it's not easy, standing up to all those people with a near-death experience, all the reincarnation advocates, and that it's hard. I mean, as a human sensitive being, you're standing up against a lot of old traditions that say, this is just crazy, it's impossible. But who's to say what's crazy and impossible? It's like everyone's brainwashed by their own dogmas. And I think what we're trying to do here is set all of ourselves free. Like you said, Viola, question everything. I think that's
what it says in my book on the first page right here. The first page of my book, it says question everything. That's I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's the book, and the book invites the reader to do their own research, to probe more into the suggestions that I give. By no means am I presenting any material as this is it right there, but do your research, do the questioning. This is the main idea of every teaching, I think, and it should be that way. And so that's what my book too says, to question everything. I love it that Viola mentioned that too. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you both. Viola, we're going to do more of these because they're so interesting. They're so, really cutting edge. I feel like people like Isabella, you really stepped out there on your own, Isabella. And now I'm glad you're finding support from people who are starting to.
Well, and also the army of trolls is growing slowly, but I'm doing the inner work, so the triggering is not really happening.
No, but it took me a little time because when I first met you, I wasn't sure what you were saying to me, and now I'm getting. No, I wasn't, because it was like this whole other thing, and then it's like, well, yeah, it seems like obvious we are being manipulated and controlled by forces totally outside our conscious awareness.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it doesn't
All
have
right.
to be. Thank you.
Alan, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure sharing this space with you. Thank you very much. Viola, it's always wonderful to have you. And thank you both for this wonderful time and this very deep, inspiring conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Viola. Any final words from you, Viola?
No, much love to everyone.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone who's tuned in online. We have a lot of live chats. Thank you. Subscribe to this channel. And we'll look for more of escaping the Archonic matrix or trap or whatever we want to call it.
Reality. Yeah.
Reality. It's exactly.